So I don't really know how to start this video, so I'm just gonna try a different approach. This video, this theory, will solve everything about FNAF. Scott will be out of the job, and your dead grandma will come back. So anyways, let's begin. When FNAF 4 came out, its story wasn't really clear to a lot of people. Was this the Bite of 87 or Bite of 83? Who is this crying child? And does he possess the puppet or Golden Freddy? Why is Purple Guy there? Who is the Fredbear Plush? And etc. You get it, the game story was confusing. Then Sister Location came out and cleared some of FNAF 4's questions. The most popular one was that it answered which year this bite took place in. It was done by having an Easter egg in the private room where when we type 1983 on the keypad, we see camera footage of the FNAF 4 rooms, confirming to us that the minigames took place in 1983. But there was also something else. The Fredbear plush from the previous game was right in front of us, and it's holding some kind of remote control or a walkie-talkie. It's not haunted, it doesn't act supernatural, it's just sitting there as a normal inanimate object. If we got the 1983 code to answer something from FNAF 4, then logically, Scott is also showing us what the Fredbear plush actually is. A device that monitored Crying Child and is controlled by William, as well as he was the final person speaking to the dying Crying Child, and he was the one promising him to put him back together. I mean, why else would William have the same Fredbear plush from FNAF 4? Said plush is holding a remote control, and William building these fake rooms in the first place. These experiments are replicating Crying Child's experience, making the kids live in constant fear just like him. There is no other reason why William would replicate Crying Child's life other than to study how to put Crying Child back together. But what I see a lot of people take issue with is the fact that this wasn't conveyed at all in FNAF 4. The plushie was teleporting everywhere, it appeared in strange places, he was somehow talking to Crying Child without even being there sometimes, and we see Purple Guy working while the plush is speaking to us. But what do you notice about these issues? They are all tied back to only FNAF 4, and do not take into consideration the future games. We know Scott would often put things in future games to help explain something confusing or answer something the community has been debating on from the previous games. We've seen this in FNAF 3, where he showed us what suit Purple Guy used for the missing children's incident, in Sister Location with the 1983 code, or FNAF 6 where he completely debunked Mic Trap or the theory that Crying Child possesses the puppet. But with the plush, there is no other game or book that proves that William wasn't controlling the Fredbear plush. I mean, a lot of people like to use the logbook as evidence that the Fredbear plush was an imaginary friend, but I don't think the logbook was outright telling us this is the case. When looking at the prompt, it tells us basic examples of things very young kids would normally have. Why only focus on the imaginary friend aspect and ignore the actual obvious callback to the plush, the stuffed animal that a kid takes everywhere? And this page practically shuts down the idea of the plush being imaginary in the first place, because in the same page, Cassidy asks Crying Child if the Fredbear plush still talks to him. How would the plush talk to him if he was an imaginary friend? I know a lot of people use this book to prove that the Fredbear plush is an imaginary friend, but I don't get why this is the case when other projects would suggest otherwise. First off, we have the plush on the desk, which we know isn't a different plush because Didophobia makes it clear that William doesn't use the plush in his experiments. He just uses the tape to manipulate the kids into doing what he asks. So the plush is the actual plush from FNAF 4. In the final Sister Location Custom Night cutscene, Michael says that William asked him to put Elizabeth back together. Again, repeating a phrase said by the Fredbear plush, and showing that William at least wanted one soul to be put back together. In FNAF 6 and the Fourth Closet, we come to find out that William was studying the supernatural, and he wanted to learn how to control souls and try to cheat death. We are also shown that he melted the 5 classics into one to collect Remnant, aka Haunted Metal. So we see in both instances he both splits souls apart and also puts them together. In the Toy Chica cutscenes in UCN, Toy Chica, who represents Afton, also says,
And once again I'm left with nothing but a broken heart. But tomorrow is another day.
Again, William, or at least someone representing him, uses another quote that is often used by the Fredbear plush. Also in UCN, Nightmare Fredbear has similar lines as the plush. We are still your friends.
We know who our friends are, and you are not one of them.
I will put you back together.
Let me put you back together, then take you apart all over again.
UCN is supposed to be William's actions and evil turning against him. I don't see why Nightmare Fredbear would say this line unless William claimed to be a friend of the crying child. And we know William made the nightmares, and since Nightmare Fredbear says that line about being put back together, it draws a connection between this line and the experiments, showing once again that the experiments have something to do with putting crying child back together. These lines also sort of imply that Nightmare Fredbear is like this monstrous version of the Fredbear plush. If it's true, that's important because Afton repeats one of those lines in FNaF AR.
Let's see how many times you can be pulled apart and put back together again.
While AR Afton is not the actual Afton, he is still accurate to how the real William acted, and lines up with Springtrap's character in The Twisted Ones. So once again, we see him repeating a line associated with the Fredbear plush, and it shows that William does indeed break apart souls and puts them back together. Moreover, it's not just Nightmare Fredbear's lines that AR Springtrap repeats, but Nightmare's as well.
You will not be spared. You will not be saved.
You will not be spared. You will not be saved.
I am here to claim what is left of you.
I am here to claim what is left of you.
Which does make sense. Nightmare is said to be the embodiment of Afton's evil, so Afton having the same voice lines is not unusual. But what's interesting to note about that is that Afton is repeating both of them, which could imply that Nightmare Fredbear and Nightmare are one of the same. This is supported by the fact that they both have basically the same mechanic in both FNaF 4 and UCN. They both use the same laugh, and when someone merged these two together, they become the grayscale Nightmare Fredbear from one of FNaF 4's teasers. So if they are the same creature, and if Nightmare Fredbear is the Nightmare version of the plush, and Nightmare is the one controlling him, then it could show that Afton has always been controlling the Fredbear plush. And what supports this more is the dialogue of the Fredbear plush being very manipulative. Don't you remember what you saw? You know what will happen if he catches you. He hates you. If what Crying Child saw was something he misunderstood, why is the plush intentionally encouraging his fears? We are still your friends. Do you still believe that? The way the Fredbear plush talks in this part is very strange. If Crying Child already considered him a friend, why ask him if he still believes it? It's like Crying Child has doubts of the plush being his friend, but the plush makes sure that Crying Child believes that he is his friend, which again ties back to that UCN voice line, showing that William was never a friend and he only pretended to be. I mean, there is so much connection between the Fredbear plush and William to just be a coincidence or a fun callback, which is why I can't see the Fredbear plush being an imaginary friend or an agony creature. The plush is right in front of us, and he never shows any sign of being supernatural. He doesn't speak, nor does he move a muscle. And I don't get the agony theories, like how does something inhabiting that turn into that? And this is also assuming that all agony creatures are evil and want to feed on human suffering, which we know isn't the case because we have Charlie from the novels. If Crying Child made the Fredbear plush possessed, why would the Fredbear plush be evil in the first place? And why would an agony creature promise to put Crying Child back together anyways? What do they gain from that? If they feed on human suffering, then why are they helping Crying Child at all? That's why I don't get the agony plush. If the plush is trying to help him, how would it know to do that? And why would it torment Crying Child when he was alive? And if you wanted to torment Crying Child on purpose, then why help him in the end? Why make a convoluted explanation when William has a history of experimenting with souls and putting souls back together? Another thing, I don't see the text color in the Night 6 minigame being different as proof that the final speaker is a different entity. It's a very small detail that could have been easily overlooked by Scott, and we already have proof of this with Mike's inconsistent skin color. I mean, at the end they are the same general color. And yeah, I get it. How is this plushie everywhere and no one notices? And how is he talking when he's not even visible? And at the same time we see William clearly working. I get how these could be problems, but personally I don't see these as issues, for the simple reason of how FNaF 4 conveyed its story, or the lack thereof. When FNaF 4 was released, Scott said in his own words that no one solved the game's story, that we haven't found the pieces and put them together, because things were left too vague and up to interpretation. That was the reason Sister Location exists, to ground the story of FNaF 4.
About this game, it created a bit of a divide between people, specifically the box at the end, and then the TV advertisement with 1983, and then the Bite of 87 debate. How did you feel about the reactions to that?
Kind of like with Five Nights at Freddy's 3, where there was something I was kind of left unsatisfied with.
Mm-hmm.
The reaction to Five Nights at Freddy's 4, and the box is tied into this, very, very closely. I don't think that people weren't really happy from a lore standpoint, even though I got the jump scares kind of right.
Yeah.
And the box really fit into that lore aspect. I felt that it had all gone kind of it had strayed too far from an actual story in a way. Me just saying that, I'm going to get torn apart for even saying that, because people are going to look at what I've ended up with. They're going to be like, and you call this a story? But by Five Nights at Freddy's 4, it kind of went a little too broad. It cast its net too wide for interpretation. I guess that's the best way to say it. It went too broad for interpretation, and that left people unsatisfied. Because whereas the other ones, there were mysteries. 4 ended up just too mysterious to the point where you really couldn't, there was no real way to figure out what was going on. And it left people unsatisfied. And like I said, with jumping from 3 to 4, I knew that I had to go in and straighten that out. It's like, people aren't really happy with this. I need to make another game. I need to kind of ground this again, not necessarily in reality, but I need to ground it in kind of storytelling again. And really lay this down with what's going on. Obviously I watch all the game theory videos, and me and Matt have sometimes had an antagonistic relationship back and forth. I inconvenience him with my games, and sometimes he inconveniences me with his theories, but it's all in good fun, but I'll tell you, he did a video on that box, and he kind of said that he thinks the contents of the box changed over the years. And I bet nobody gave that a whole lot of thought, but I saw that and I was like, he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. The contents of that box have changed over the years, because, it's for that very reason. It's because, of what I was intending the game to be when it happened. And then after the reaction of it, I was like, I need to craft this into something better for the people who see this as important. And that kind of indirectly does change the contents of the box, because it changes the contents of everything that came before. So I just thought that was an interesting observation on his part.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned this on one of your Steam posts or something, that you put some things in Sister Location to ground out the story of FNaF 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right, so...
He is outright telling us that FNaF 4 wasn't even a story anymore, and that its original intention was changed because the fans weren't satisfied with the story, or the lack thereof. Sister Location was meant to ground the story of FNaF 4, to actually make it a story again. which means that there were changes that he made to the story. These changes were big enough to consequently change the contents of the box. And this wasn't the first time he did this. Like, let's look at the scooper. There was no way in hell that the scooper at the time of Sister Location's release was anything else but a machine that scoops out animatronic parts. It's a scooper. It scoops things out like how you scoop out ice cream. Baby even compares the scooper to that. But then FNAF 6 released and showed us that the scooper was actually a remnant injector, and that the scooper injected the remnant of the classic animatronics into the Funtimes. Scott has said multiple times that he would sometimes lean too heavily on sci-fi, but he would sometimes steer it back to the supernatural.
With Sister Location, I feel like it leaned a little too sci-fi and left a few plot points. Well, there were a few plot points that were really bothering people, so then I made Pizzeria Simulator.
I think the Funtimes are a result of that. Instead of actual sentient machines like in Security Breach, he made them possessed by the 5 kids. Scott changed an element of his story to better fit this franchise, despite the original intention being different. So maybe the same could be said about the Fredbear Plush, and maybe even FNaF World in general. Whatever the original intention was, whether Afton was the plush from the start or not, doesn't really matter now, and we have to trust the newer info in the future projects more. Or another possibility is that Afton was always the plush and Scott didn't portray it well enough, like most of the things in FNAF 4. And it's not like William putting Crying Child back together is out of character. Mind you, he isn't doing this because he loves his son. Far from it, he only promised him to put him back together to study possession. William wanted Michael to put Elizabeth back together. If this was a bad thing for William, or something that resulted in the souls being freed, then he wouldn't have told Michael to do it, and we wouldn't see Elizabeth possessing Circus Baby in FNAF 6. Also in the 4th closet, when the kids are put back together, they still haunt the amalgamation because they can't simply just pass on. They only pass on when they are burned in the furnace, and as we know, fire burns remnant. Another element for why putting souls back together is not out of character for William is seen again in the 4th closet. The kids think William is their friend, and they trust him. And for Elizabeth it's the same. Despite being put back together, she is still loyal to William. So William putting Bike Victim back together is in character for him. He wants to do it because it teaches him more about possession, and he would be able to create something he can control. Also, him being the plush doesn't mean he was experimenting with Crying Child. I think it's most likely a way for Afton to be able to control the kid and keep him on his side, like Vanessa in the movie. That's why even as Crying Child was dying, he is speaking as if he was the plush, because he would make sure that Crying Child's last memory of his father is him being his Fredbear friend, similar to the kids thinking that the yellow rabbit is their friend. Now there's another element of the Fredbear Plush and the final speaker I have to discuss. FNaF World. In FNaF World, the final speaker is seen in the very beginning and speaks to Bite Victim, telling him the same thing as in FNaF 4. In the game itself, a glitchy version of Fredbear can talk to us. He has the same yellow eyes as the final speaker and tells us to find the clocks to help Crying Child find his way. We discover these clocks are the hints that lead to the secret FNAF 3 minigames, and when we get that particular ending, the final speaker tells Crying Child to find the pieces. This led many to believe that Glitchtrap or Yellow Eyes are Charlotte, Cassidy, or Crying Child's imaginary friend come to life. Since if the Yellow Eyes makes you set up the pieces to lead to Happiest Day, then it has to be one of them, right? Well, I don't think that's the case, because like I discussed, the final speaker and the Fredbear Plush are most definitely William. So Glitchtrap has to be William as well. But how would that work? Why is William setting up the clues to help the kids have their happiest day? Well, simply put, he is, and he isn't at the same time. I'll explain that in a bit, because I want to discuss another element of FNaF World that a lot of people gloss over. It is if FNaF World is even reliable anymore. Yeah, Scott himself said that FNaF World is tied to a canon game, but if we look at what he said again, he specifically said that he tried to tie it into a canon game. What makes FNaF World hard to take seriously is the fact that FNaF World is very meta. This whole game is self-aware, with our main task being to kill Scott Cawthon. Other meta elements present in the game are Tripper tries to take revenge because his game failed, and Evil Old Man Consequences mentions the game's code, and even Glitchbear himself mentions Scott a few times as the Puppet Master, and references Baby in Update 2. And Adventure Fredbear quite literally says that FNaF World, the game, bombed, and he's literally telling us to exit the game and play something else. This game isn't set in a spirit world or anything like that. It is objectively a game that is aware that it's a game, which makes the lore in it very unreliable. FNaF World before Update 2 was in this middle area between FNaF 4 being the last game and sister location. FNaF World was teased not long after FNaF 4 released, and Scott stated multiple times after FNaF 4 released that there was not gonna be a FNaF 5, and he was adamant of that fact. He even said at one point that FNaF World was gonna be the last FNaF game. This is very important context because FNaF World was trying to be tied with the box plotline. See, in the game files, an image of the box open can be found. So Scott wanted to show us, or at least heavily hint at what was in the box. But when he wasn't satisfied with the story, he scrapped it and he took the story in another direction. And this was evident by the fact that the first teaser for FNaF World Update 2 and sister location was literally posted 24 hours apart. That's why in FNaF World Update 2 there was zero lore in it, and went heavy with the meta references, as well as teasing sister location. The only thing that was connected to the old story was in the metadata of the first FNaF World Update 2 teaser, where there was a hidden message in the metadata that read, "He put the pieces back together." So that part of the story was essentially done off screen. There's also the chance that it may have been an error and was never supposed to be there, since this text is only present in this teaser, and then it was absent in later teasers. What also makes it hard to take FNaF World seriously is the FNaF World mobile port, which literally omits every single part of the lore the original ones had. Yes, the game is still the same, but the dialogue is all different. The context is changed immensely, and in the end of the clock route, Yellow Eyes is revealed as Bounce Pot, who also did the bite of 87. And yeah, Scott removed this version of the game a day later, but I don't think it's for any lore reasons, because just a few days later, he abandoned FNaF World as a whole. And mind you, this version of the game was released after Sister Location and its custom night. So it shows us that after Scott changed the story of FNaF 4, he made FNaF World irrelevant, with the only exception of making Old Man Consequences canon in UCN. And even then, they both speak and act in very different ways. So while I wouldn't go so far and call FNaF World non-canon because of the Ultimate Custom Night, we shouldn't take the game's story literally or as 100% as originally intended. FNaF World isn't some ghost world or another realm like a lot of people believe. It is a meta game that has some lore that ties back to the games, and like FNaF 4, is different now compared to its original release. So if Glitchbear wasn't representing William originally, or has always been him since the start, either way, because of sister location and the reveal that the Fredbear Plush is William, Glitchbear is certainly representing William now. Do you want to know what's interesting? When we see Circus Baby for the first time, she is shrouded in complete darkness, and the only thing you could see were her glowing yellow eyes. This is very similar to Yellow Eyes from the beginning of the game, but we know they aren't the same because the eye shape is a little different, and Glitchbear mentions something terrible coming, which is what Scott tells us just before Baby kills him. These two are definitely different, but I don't think their similarity is supposed to be ignored. Assuming that Glitchbear is a meta representation of William, Baby is mimicking something her father does, which interestingly isn't the first time she does this. In fact, she did it twice. First in sister location when Elizabeth says,
"Everything is okay. I'm still here."
Which is the same thing that William says in the first FNaF 3 teaser. and the second time she does this is in the first teaser for FNaF 6, which again has baby's eyes appearing in the dark. And the teaser is named I Am Still Here, again the same thing that was written in the FNaF 3 teaser. So her being the yellow eyes in the end of update 2 could most likely be because she is mimicking her father. I mean, why else would she have yellow eyes instead of green? Another connection to Afton and Glitchtrap is that some of the Spring Bonnie sprites from previous games had yellow eyes, while Fredbear never did. But I know there are gonna be some people who are still not going to be convinced by this. If Glitchtrap is a meta representation of William, why would he want to set up Happiest Day? Well, okay, let us assume for the moment that FNaF World is still somewhat canon to the games. Well, I think William being Glitchtrap / Yellow Eyes still works, for one simple reason. In FNaF World and FNaF 3, we see the hints of all of the FNaF 3 minigames, except one, Happiest Day itself. Happiest Day is never hinted in FNaF 3 or FNaF World. It wasn't even featured in FNaF 3's extras. You wouldn't even know this minigame existed unless you go into the game files. Happiest Day is hidden, and I think that was done on purpose, and ties in with William's manipulation of the kids. If we complete only the minigames that were hinted in Follow Me, what happens? We still get the bad ending, and all the kids are gathered in one place, but no puppet to give Cassidy her cake. The kids being in one place having their happiest day without being freed is surprisingly what William wants and tries to achieve. They are home with me. The happiest day. That's what Dave Miller, aka William, said in the Silver Eyes. He is essentially saying he is their happiest day. They'll kill you too, Jessica said. No, I am quite confident that I will survive. Really? John said suddenly. I'm pretty sure they're the spirits of the kids you killed. He all but spat the last two words at the ground. Why would they hurt us? It's you they're after. They don't remember, Dave said. They've forgotten. The dead too forget. All they know is that you are here, trying to take away their happiest day. You are intruders. He lowered his voice to a hush. You're grown-ups. And what makes you think they won't kill you? John said again, and Dave's face took on something shining, almost beatific. Because I am one of them. William gave the kids their happiest day, and in turn they trust the Yellow Rabbit. They trust him. He's one of them. And this is similar to what happens in Into the Pit and Return to the Pit, where both have William's victims dying in a birthday event, and the yellow thing puts party hats on them to simulate a birthday. And in Return to the Pit, we see that the yellow thing puts the party hats on the kids because they fall in some sort of trance, and they suddenly trust him. We see this closely with Oswald. When he puts on a party hat, he suddenly does what the Yellow Rabbit asks, and he wasn't able to stop himself. Moreover, in the logbook there is a coupon called Happiest Day, and it is the only coupon to reserve a party room, where we see the dead kids. And it also gives out party hats for the kids. It is as if William wanted the kids' final memory was having this Happiest Day event with their Yellow Rabbit friend. The only reason they don't remember that the Yellow Rabbit killed them, because, as William said, the dead do forget. So it's not out of character for William to want the kids to reach the Happiest Day minigame, because keeping them in a Happiest Day without the puppet freeing them will still maintain their trust for William. Another interesting note is the fact that we know William got the endos of the classics during Follow Me, and he merged them together and put the remnant into the Funtimes. Why is this important? Because it is said in the fourth closet that to get the kids' remnant, they have to be cooperative. Since the kids thought William was their friend and they trusted him, they were willing to give a part of themselves to William. And for the games, since we see those hints in Follow Me that lead to the Happiest Day minigames, this could show us that William manipulated Crying Child and he led the kids to a false Happiest Day, so they can trust him when he steals their remnant and puts them into the fun times. And this ties in with Henry's insanity speech. He says Afton brought all the kids together, and he questions if they are even still aware anymore. In the fourth closet, the kids weren't aware that they were doing bad things for William. They weren't aware of where they were or why they were there. Same thing happens in the movie, where when Chica tries to put Abby in a springlock Ella, in the kid's perspective, she's making Abby one of them, unaware that Abby will be brutally killed by the suit. So the same thing could apply to the games and the False Happiest Day, where it is the only time in the games where we gather all the kids together, just like what Glitchtrap wanted. And yeah, Henry most likely meant William brought the kids together by merging their endos, but still, in both cases they end up together, in one place. This sort of tactic of giving the kids a false sense of security was something present in the Stitch Rate Singers. When Eleanor knocks out Jake, Jake has a dream about a birthday party, and he suddenly forgets about the outside world. The birthday party had lots of people, and Jake felt nothing but happiness. But the thing is, it wasn't real, and it wasn't even a memory. Eleanor made this fake happiest day to manipulate Jake into thinking everything was okay, when in fact it wasn't. So this once again shows that fake happiest days do exist, and since Eleanor is made from William's evil, I would guess that William did this before, and this knowledge was embedded into Eleanor. What is most interesting about Happiest Day, however, is the fact that Cassidy is there since the beginning, before any of the other kids are there. If I'm right about this fake Happiest Day, then this would imply that Cassidy trusted William already. But that is a topic I'll have to talk about in the next section, but be sure to keep it in the back of your heads. Like I discussed, I think, when Afton killed the kids and into the pit, he did it in this fake birthday party, most likely because he wanted to make sure that their last memories that they had was in a birthday event, giving them their happiest day, so they can trust him in the afterlife. They don't see me as I am now, they only remember me as I was. And I also think that in Follow Me, when William decides to melt the endos of the classics, he needed to make the kids trust him and lure them into a false sense of security. To do that, he manipulated Crying Child to bring the kids together in Happiest Day. The reason why Cassidy was already present is because she already trusted William from the start. Happiest Day would be this dream that the kids are having, and would be unaware of the real world, much like Jake in the Stingers. But there is still the question of why the kids suddenly want to attack William and save them, and also in Follow Me, and technically in Sister Location, since they thought Mike was William. If they trusted William, why do they turn on him? And if you noticed, Afton needed to give the kids their happiest day twice for some reason. I think this is where the puppet comes into play. As we know, she is the protector of the kids. She takes care of most of them. And yes, I did say most of them, because I noticed that the puppet may not actually be protecting Cassidy. In Give Gifts, Give Life, we see the puppet giving gifts and giving life to the kids, except for one. When we give the mask to the last kid, Cassidy suddenly appears on Golden Freddy's head, which is technically her mask, jump scares us. The puppet didn't give Cassidy life. Cassidy possessed the Golden Freddy suit on her own, or maybe with the help of Crying Child. When Henry talks about the kids that the puppet held in her arms, it shows an image of Give Gifts, Give Life, and it only shows the core 4 and not Cassidy, as if it's showing us that the puppet didn't protect Cassidy for some reason. I think the reason is because Cassidy was tricked into thinking William was her friend. Again, I will talk about this in the next section, but bear with me. That's most likely the reason why I think the core 4 wanted to attack William and save them. The puppet can see through William's tricks, and since she was by the side of the 4 kids, the moment they possessed the robots, she would tell them the truth. That's why William repeats the False Happiest Day, to make them forget what the puppet told them and make them trust him again. For why the kids suddenly attack William after that, I think it's possible that the puppet was able to foil William's tricks and eventually was able to reach the kids in Happiest Day. And maybe when we complete the minigame, She doesn't free them from the animatronics per se, but she frees them from William's control, and essentially wakes them up from their trance. Cassidy and the others now see through the deception and attack William, but the downside is they already haunted the Funtimes before they knew the truth. That's the difference between the novels and the games. In the novels there was no puppet to tell them the truth. William gave the kids their happiest day and he didn't have to do it again, and so the kids trusted him up until the end of the fourth closet. Now for a short recap of everything I have discussed. And if you're enjoying the video so far, please like and subscribe. In 1983, William made his own security system in the form of putting cameras on multiple Fredbear plushies. He would sometimes talk to Crying Child through the plush, or it would play recorded voice lines. William did this because he wanted to control his kid by disguising himself as a friendly plush. After the big bite, William pretends to be the Fredbear plush while talking to his dying son, so his final memory of William would be him as Fredbear. William promises to put Crying Child back together, because somehow, Crying Child was able to leave a part of himself in the real world, similar to Henry in the novels. Afton would then create the nightmare experiments to learn more about Crying Child's soul and how he could rig souls and then put them back together. With that knowledge, he does the missing children's incident and makes sure that the kids' last memory of him was being their friend at a birthday party. The puppet then brings the core 4 to life and shows them that William is the bad guy. However, the puppet wasn't able to reach Cassidy. Flash forward to Follow Me, and William wanted the endos of the classic animatronics so he can merge them together and put their remnant into the Funtimes. But he couldn't do that until he had their full trust. So William tasks Crying Child to bring the kids together and create a False Happiest day, which allowed him to take the remnant and put it into the Funtimes. Then the puppet finally finds the kids and releases them from their trance or dreamlike state, and all of them finally realize that William is the bad man and attack him, which results in him becoming spring-trapped. Alright, recap's over. Let's continue. In both the novels and movie, the main tactic that William uses to control the kids is the yellow rabbit drawing, which makes the kids think they are friends. The FNaF movie actually explains this concept very well.
You know, pictures hold tremendous power for children. Before we learn to speak, images are the most important tool we have for understanding the world around us. What's real, what matters to us most, these are things children learn to communicate almost exclusively through pictures.
Because the kids understand the world using pictures, they see that the yellow rabbit is supposed to be their friend, when he's in fact not. And in both the fourth closet and the movie, when one of the characters changed the drawing to show the kids the truth, they suddenly understand and turn on William, which led me to realize something. This sort of manipulation of the kids is not exactly seen anywhere in the games. In none of the games do we see the yellow rabbit drawing, or some sort of hint that the kids see William as the yellow rabbit. But if we follow the rules established by the fourth closet, then this has to be the case in the games, because William can't put Remnant into the Funtimes unless they trust him. Like I discussed, Glitchbear is most likely a meta representation of William, which is important to point out because we are seeing William pretending to be the Fredbear character, rather than the traditional Spring Bonnie, which may connect to FNaF World and the Fredbear Plush. What if the reason William is seen as a Fredbear character in World is because Crying Child thought that William was the Fredbear Plush? But to take it one step further, what if Crying Child didn't just see William as just the plush, but the Fredbear character in general? If you didn't know, in Update 1 of FNaF World, this was the sprite of regular Fredbear in the overworld. Does it seem familiar? It should, because it's basically the same sprite as Glitchbear, but without the yellow eyes. So Glitchbear's design is more based on the Fredbear character rather than just a small plush. And this got me thinking, since we don't see this sort of yellow rabbit drawing in the games, what if in that continuity, it wasn't just Crying Child who saw William as the Fredbear character, but all the missing kids too, rather than the traditional yellow rabbit? And before you come after me, yes, William used the Spring Bonnie suit, but this doesn't actually really debunk this idea. In the Silver Eyes, we found out that the spirit of Golden Freddy, Michael Brooks, was kidnapped by William wearing not the Spring Bonnie suit, but the Fredbear suit, and is the only time William used it in this timeline. And yet when we see Michael again in the fourth closet, we find out that he actually sees William as the Yellow Rabbit, like the other kids. So despite being killed by William wearing the Fredbear suit, his spirit thinks William is the Yellow Rabbit. So despite William using the Spring Bonnie suit in the missing children's incident, he could still manipulate the kids into thinking he was Fredbear. I know people are gonna bring up Into the Pit and how William is represented as the Yellow Rabbit, but you gotta understand, this is not really how the kids remember William. What we see in Into the Pit is just the building's memories of what happened on June 26th. And for the sake of argument, if this was how the kids remembered William, then it would actually help my case, because if the kids saw the Yellow Rabbit as a monster, William would want to change that and become another character that isn't remembered as a monster. So how did William do it? Going back to the fourth closet, when Carlton is injected with the kid's remnant, he goes into the spirit world and sees the souls of the kids, but he was still able to see the real world at the same time. However, when his mind was drifting more into the spirit world, he could see William as the Yellow Rabbit. It's only when his mind drifts more into the real world does he see William as himself. So the only reason he can see William as the Yellow Rabbit is because of the kid's remnant and memories affecting his own soul and memories. Going back to the games, I think a lot of us would agree that the crying child is at least possessing the Golden Freddy animatronic, mainly because of the week before. And if part of his soul thinks that William was the Fredbear Plush, then at least Cassidy would think that as well, because Crying Child's memories would be mixed with Cassidy's. That's the reason why she was already in the Happiest Day minigame, because she already trusted William because of Crying Child's memories. And that is why the puppet couldn't reach her and protect her like the others. As for the other kids, if we go with the idea of the False Happiest Day, then because of Crying Child's influence or fusion with the other kids, they should hypothetically see William as Fredbear as well. Surprisingly, this theory does make a lot of sense, especially in the game's timeline, because when I thought about it, I noticed that William never wore the Spring Bonnie suit a lot in the games. He used it in the MCI, then it was sealed for years, and then he wore it again in Follow Me. He barely wore the thing when he was alive and experimenting, and in between that time, he actually used the Golden Freddy suit in the FNAF 2 murders. We know this because Spring Bonnie is sealed in the FNAF 1 location during this time, and when Ralph mentions the yellow suit being used, Golden Freddy becomes active. So William did indeed wear the Golden Freddy suit and he killed the kids with it. So if he had free access to the Golden Freddy suit and not Spring Bonnie, then it would make a lot of sense that he would want the kids to think he was Fredbear. Of course, people will say in the comments that it is impossible for William to use the Golden Freddy suit to do the DCI, because how would William use the Golden Freddy suit if it's haunted? But that's the point. If William was able to manipulate Cassidy into thinking he was Fredbear from the start, then she would be unaware of his actions and intentions. That's why she doesn't attack him and save them. And another neat connection that I found was, we see a child's drawing of a kid with Golden Freddy, which is very similar to the Yellow Rabbit drawing in the movie and novels. So what if this drawing also helped manipulate Cassidy into thinking Fredbear was her friend? Let's pause here for a minute, because I want to address something real quick. I'm sure by now some of you are confused on why would Cassidy, who possesses Fredbear, see William as Fredbear. Would that trick even work on her? I don't think it's much of an issue, because in FNAF 2, Freddy and Toy Freddy are fooled when our player wears the Freddy mask. They know they are Freddy, but when they see Jeremy, they presumably just see another Freddy character, and they have no problems with it. Golden Freddy, at the time of the MCI, was just an old spare suit by this point, so when Cassidy was stuffed into Golden Freddy, she saw herself as an old spare suit, rather than just, the Fredbear character. Even if she saw herself as that, again, she could just think William is another Fredbear character. And here's some food for thought. For all the things to represent Afton's evil, its appearance takes the form of a bear character rather than a rabbit. After all of that, this theory finally led me to Ultimate Custom Night, and the one element from this game that has kept me perplexed for a long time, and it is none other than the Golden Freddy cutscene. See, for a while now I have started to doubt more and more that the cutscene is showing Cassidy moving on. Of course, this is assuming that Andrew is the vengeful spirit, and Cassidy is just there for some reason. Maybe to stop Andrew or join him or anything like that. But anyway, the reason why I'm skeptical in saying that the Golden Freddy cutscene is showing Cassidy moving on is mostly because of the presentation. You have Golden Freddy violently glitching and twitching, his eyes remaining lit as the ominous song is playing, and in the background you can just hear the faint sound of fire crackling. And Golden Freddy is consumed by the darkness with no sign of calming down or stopping. I just don't see how this can equate to Cassidy deciding to give up and rest. I mean, let's look at the times where souls actually rested. In FNaF 3, the lights of the masks go out. In the fourth closet, all the kids go to the light. And in Frights, Andrew is sent to the light and is free, and all of the ball pit becomes illuminated as the souls inside are put to rest. The Golden Freddy cutscene has nothing similar to any of these examples I just mentioned. If anything, the cutscene has more in common with the Night 6 minigame in FNaF 4. Crying Child continues to cry as he is consumed by the darkness, and we know Crying Child ain't free after this minigame, but Cassidy is supposed to be freed after FNaF 6. So here's my interpretation of what this cutscene could mean after everything I've talked about. Since this game brought back some elements from FNaF World, I thought about a different character that could have returned for UCN. Glitchbear. Because surprisingly, there are some amount of connections between this cutscene and Glitchbear. Look at the similarities between the two. Both are Fredbear, not specifically the plushie but the Fredbear character. Both have glowing eyes, both only appear in the void, and they both constantly glitch and twitch. Even the Fredbear plush has two instances of him being in the void. So what if the Golden Freddy in this cutscene is actually Glitchbear, which in turn would mean the cutscene is showing William? I find it interesting that Scott for some reason specifically used the FNaF 1 Golden Freddy model for the cutscene, and used the weathered Golden Freddy model in the gameplay. Why wouldn't he just use the same model for the game? What if he did that to show us that there was a distinction between the two? So what if the model that actually looked more like Fredbear was supposed to represent Glitchbear? And I hear ya, why not just use the Fredbear model? I think it's possible he didn't use it because he didn't plan on making a Fredbear model, and just used the closest thing to it. And when he did decide to make a Fredbear model, it was already too late in development to add him in the cutscene. But that admittedly is a very weak point, because he could have just recolored the hat and bow tie for us to get the picture. And I get it, why would Scott represent William as Fredbear rather than the Yellow Rabbit? Well, what if the cutscene is seen through another character's POV, someone who saw William as Fredbear before? Cassidy. Despite the illusion of William being a friend is broken, she still technically sees him as maybe an evil Fredbear. Like Old Man Consequences implies, she wanted to try and stop Andrew from tormenting Afton and just let him die, but she couldn't reach him or William, and in the end, William would be lost to her forever. That's when she is taken by Old Man Consequences and was told to leave the demon, William, to his demons, Andrew and his custom night, and to finally rest. If the Adventure Freddy character represents Cassidy and Glitchbear represents William, then it would tie in with the Void cutscene, and it's basically this, but if the RTX was turned on. Picture this, even after beating the game's final challenge, the Ultimate Custom Night doesn't end. William is still alive, he is still stuck. The constant twitching, reminiscent of a spring locking, the somber music, all of that showing that William is still restless, still being tormented by the vengeful spirit. This wasn't the end, but rather, it was still the beginning. The faint fire crackling in the background signifies that the vengeful spirit will keep Afton burning for a long time. and there is nothing you could do to stop it. I think this idea really fits with the presentation of the cutscene, and would actually be a fitting end for this game. You might have beaten Custom Night, but William is still stuck. The vengeful spirit is not gonna let go, and there is nothing to stop him as he fades away into the darkness. Alright, after all of that, let's finally make a timeline and recap everything in this video. In 1983, William made the Fredbear Plush to watch Crying Child, and would sometimes talk to him because he wanted to control the kid. After the big bite, William pretends to be the Fredbear Plush while talking to his dying son, so his final memory of William would be him as Fredbear. William promises to put Crying Child back together. So William made the nightmare experiments to study how to do that. Then on June 26, 1985, William wore the spring Bonnie suit and lured 5 kids in a fake birthday party. He hoped that, like his son, William could make the kids think that they were friends before they died, and make their spirits trust him after possessing the animatronics. But that didn't work, as the puppet gave the kids life and showed them the truth. However, Cassidy was able to possess the Golden Freddy suit on her own without the puppet's help, and unfortunately, her memories would be mixed with Crying Child's, and since Crying Child thought that William was his Fredbear friend, Cassidy would think that as well, and be trapped in the Happiest Day minigame. In 1987, when William killed the second set of 5 kids, he used the Golden Freddy suit, as Cassidy trusted him. However, the other kids tried to attack him throughout his work week. In Follow Me, William wanted to make all the kids trust him, so he could take the remnant and put them into the Funtimes. So he tasked Crying Child with bringing the souls to the Happiest Day minigame, as he was taking them apart in the real world and merging their endos together. And because of Crying Child's memories mixing with the other kids, they also think that William is their Fredbear friend. Eventually, the puppet would foil William's plan and reach the kids in the Happiest Day minigame. She would set the kids free from their control, and they would fight back against William. Which results in him getting spring-locked. However, their souls still inhabit the Funtimes. And then we finally reach UCN, and we possibly see William as the Fredbear character in the final cutscene, being tormented by the vengeful spirit. And that's it. Again, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Also, I said this in my community post, but if you haven't seen it, I won't be able to upload in the next couple months, because uni takes a lot of my time, so until I'm done with this semester, I'm not gonna be able to upload any more videos. Maybe I'll upload shorts, but I'm not sure. So anyways, see you on the flip side.